This is Father John from Grupo Solidaridad. And last Sunday, I tried to do my weekly gospel reflection on Sunday morning, or did it Saturday night, and then was going to have it projected early Sunday morning. And for some reason, I didn't get the settings right. For hopefully, this is getting it right. I did make any notice I'm going to go live. So what I want to do now is just kind of share a version of what I shared on Sunday at the First Unitarian Church, where I was a guest minister sharing a sermon called "That Which You Resist Persists." The context of that service was the Unitarian Church, First Unitarian Church of San Jose, has a series of sermons and lectures. This past month, January, is really about resistance, and February they'll be talking about resilience. And so I was asked to speak about resistance, and one of the things that we learn in a kind of recovery from adult children of alcoholics, ACA work, is that that which you resist persists. And so if we continue to show resistance, whatever we are resisting is actually persisting, and it's not getting any better. So, and I want to, and it's also coming on the heels of the martyrdom of Renee Good and the martyrdom of Alex Pretti. So I want to kind of I was speaking about that perspective. And so I think I will hopefully have a little bit more composure than I did then. It was very emotional because we're all still working through our emotions. So the service was kind of leading up to that. And before I gave the reflection, there was some reflection and preparation around Dr. King and his teaching about resistance and the readings that they chose for that day. The Story for All Ages, which is often a children's book that they read, and then we had a Hasidic tale that was read. That was also very very powerful. So maybe I can read that. If I can find the Hasidic story, and then I'll go into the sermon. Rabbi Zusa of Hanipol once said, "If I see evil in another, it is because there is something in me that needs healing." His students were shocked. "Rabbi," they said, "what about real injustice?" And Zusius answered, "When you heal what is broken in you, you will know how to confront what is broken in the world without hatred." So that was a Hasidic tale that I chose, and I'm going to go ahead and just give a version of what I did on Sunday. On Saturday, I was on the way to a PICO assembly in Sacramento. PICO, California is the part of a network of community organizers that I believe in, part of a national network called Faith in Action. And so we were all gathering from throughout the state, and this is what they were doing. So everybody in the congregation kind of was aware of what was happening on Saturday. So I'm just telling you that now. So yesterday on the way to a PICO assembly in Sacramento, I was reminded once again that they are killing us, literally killing us. A 37-year-old man, Alex Jeffrey Pretti, was killed by an ICE officer in front of a donut shop. Alex was an intensive care unit nurse at the Veterans Administration. It is the second fatal shooting this month in Minneapolis, in addition to another non-fatal shooting amidst a major federal crackdown in Minnesota. Video shows Alex was directing traffic and filming federal agents. His right hand held his phone, and his left hand was empty. He was wrestled to the ground by several agents. At least two had their weapons already drawn. Alex was protecting a woman, a fellow observer. The officer sprayed him with a chemical agent, punched him in the head, grabbed the gun that he had legally, and then they shot him at close range. A doctor nearby had to argue his way past armed agents to reach Alex. And the doctor noticed something chilling. The agents were not administering first aid. They were counting the number of shots in Alex's body. Coming so soon after the killing of Renee Good, I am physically and mentally exhausted. I feel as though I am beyond grief. What I feel now is anger, rage. And I want to be clear, anger here is not a failure. It is a proper, normative human response to state violence. I want to resist ICE. I want to resist this regime. But if I am honest, and I want to be honest with you, my resistance is being driven by anger. Reactive fury is what is happening. And if I go deeper, I find that it's my ego, my righteous anger. That's driving this bus. Not God, not a desire to work for the common good, not the ethics that I claim to live by or I was taught in the seminary. It's my grievance, my outrage, until I can stop and get out of that reactive monkey mind. That which I resist will indeed persist. It's in this space, the space of Grupo Solidaridad, this online space that we created on Facebook, and hopefully we're creating, in other spaces, more public. It's a sacred space of fellow travelers. And I believe we're safe enough to say this out loud. And I feel that we have to talk about this rage that we might be feeling, this outrage, this boiling anger. We need to say it and just speak it and let it out there, because it's a moral obligation that we can be honest about how we're feeling and where we're coming from and where we are actually located emotionally. Because I'm not here speaking just as a human being, but I'm also speaking as a faith leader here in the South Bay, but also a faith leader who is deeply flawed, very broken, like I'm sure many of you might be as well. And I want to move into a space that is not merely reactive. I need to be in a space. I need to be surrounded by. I need to be engaging in conversations and rituals and poetry and immerse myself in other people and other energies so that I'm not merely reactive. And to do that, I really, 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 really need to tap into something beyond myself. I call that spirit. Call it source. Some may call it God. I do. It's there in the holy, in the divine, that I find myself no longer bound by my rage. I'm no longer trapped into the betrayal that I feel towards a country that I once trusted. That's why, in spaces like in faith communities, in spaces where we share a common moral vision, why they're so essential to resistance. And it's spaces like this, and it's very abstract in terms of an online reality. But it's spaces like this that are not shaped by greed or driven by the 1% agenda, or certainly not driven by this regime that we're living under. Spaces where there is this mutuality and heart to heart and attendance to the spirit and honesty, where we can speak our truth and authenticity of where we're coming from and who we are. These spaces are not restrictive, but they're really ever expansive. They help us see a different way forward rather than stumbling in the dark of righteous indignation. These spaces open what I'm going to call it a third eye vision. And it's not something mystical or abstract, but this third eye vision, it's the standing outside of ourselves, looking outwards. It's a moral imagination. So I'll just call it a moral imagination. And this moral imagination allows us to see beyond what the empire tells us is inevitable, that resistance is futile, with apologies towards Star Trek and the Borg. But it's this moral vision, this moral imagination, we can begin to conceive of. We begin to, in our mind and our heart, construct a radical inclusion rather than a xenophobic white Christian nationalism that seems to pervade throughout this country in these days. We begin to conceive of mercy rather than, using a 5-year-old child as bait. A space and a vision that allows us to understand that we are further traumatizing communities with armed patrols, broken doors, and shattering windows. It allows us to conceive of a space and a relationship where wisdom guides our hearts and guides our conversation rather than belligerence and meandering rants. This moral imagination lets us think of and build and construct what a society might say if might be possible if we simply loved our neighbors unconditionally. I all heard that, and I'm not blowing rainbows out anyone's ass here. I didn't say that on Sunday, but I'm saying it here to y'all. But I know it's just loving unconditionally is not rocket science. It's profoundly simple, and it's almost childlike in the naivete. And there was once rabbi, a wise rabbi, a couple thousand years ago said, one cannot enter the kingdom of the divine unless you enter it as a child. This moral imagination is born out of the heart, chesed. It's a heart that is curious and open, a heart that is ontologically optimistic, which is a thing that actually makes us really human, because it is this impossibly naive, loving heart that allows us to say our last words of our life. I am not mad at you. That our last action on earth is trying to protect a legal observer with our body in the hope that batons and stun guns and fists of angry ICE agents don't pummel the one that we're trying to protect. It is this innocent, loving, curious, and open heart that leads us to deconstruct the lies, denies, and false narratives that we've fashioned about ourselves and that we've constructed about other people. It is this heart, precisely this heart, that leads us to the kind of resistance that will become the engine for real and sustainable change. Now, resistance is not successful in ending the cycle of rage and despair, because as Dr. King said in his writing, his book, Strength to Love, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Light. You see, light is the true form of resistance. It's not anger, but rather a vision that has yet to be realized. And I conclude that as I conclude this resistance is rooted in love, that when it's rooted in love, it does more than just simply conquer injustice. It loosens and dismantles the bonds that hold us in a cycle of never-ending anger. And when this resistance is rooted in love, it makes a way for us to have a more humane future. And I want to be clear that this kind of love is not sentimental. It's not passive. It doesn't look away from suffering, soften the truth. It doesn't try to bury its head in text and ritual and song and hymn and chant and whatever it is. This kind of love is courageous. It tells the truth without becoming what it opposes. This love refuses to let our pain be weaponized, and it refuses to let our grief harden into hatred, because it refuses to let our anger become the engine that drives us, even when that anger is justified. And because empire feeds on our reactivity, and because it depends on our exhaustion, and it thrives when we mirror the very way violence that we're trying to resist, the very violence that we're trying to resist, because empire does that, we need to find another way to break that cycle. And I believe that we already have it in the ancient technologies of our ancestors. Love. Love interrupts this cycle. Love slows us down. Love restores our capacity to see each other fully human again. Love reconnects us to something deeper than fear, something older than empire and stronger than any regime. Now, I'm stating all this because this is not about, and I said this on Sunday to the folks at the Unitarian Church, this is not a call to cerebral contemplation. It's a call to clarity. This is not a retreat from resistance, but a regrounding of it. Because resistance rooted not in our ego, in our grievance, and our umbrage, in our and our righteousness. Resistance is rooted in a moral imagination, a vision of what should be, what could be, and what could be possible if we all work together. A moral imagination gives birth to a belief that it is possible to have another way of being. It's this kind of resistance that's going to sustain our movements. So my hope is that we think about this. My pages are out of order, but that's okay because I'm just about done here. So yeah, I'm just hoping that we can work on this together. Kind of consider this what we could do together. Because love isn't weak. Love is the only force that can imagine a future beyond the one that we've been given. Empire crumbles under love. And yes, we can say we make fun of the emperor, we make fun of his entourage and all that stuff. And that's all great because it's joyful, it's funny, and we expose the nakedness of the silliness and the stupidity of the empire. That's all great. But the question is, how are we sustaining ourselves while we do that? Because if we don't have that core center, that this is beyond just our umbrage and our ego, because there are people who are directly affected who can't protest. There are people who are directly affected who can't speak their truth. There are people who are directly affected who are hiding, who are in refuge places, literally in some form of sanctuary. And they're hidden and they're terrified. And I know that the work that's going on right now is actually going beyond where ICE is. It's going into our homes. It's pulling us out of cars, breaking our windows, chasing us down the street and shooting us in the back. That's where we are in this country. And we have to figure a way to stop that shit. And not all of people watching this might be people of faith, but I would just suggest that in your resistance work to strongly consider a dialogue and a connection to and a co-strategizing with faith leaders that are grounded in a commitment to justice, not the ones that are prophets for the emperor, but prophets for a new world. You've got to find those people. And when you find those faith leaders, connect to them, collaborate with them, figure out how to engage them in your work. So that's it. I know we ended a little bit ago, but I just want to kind of share that with y'all. Okay, I'll see you all later. Bye, yeah.